Hello everyone. Today we will be learning about the living world. We come across a lot number of things like plants, animals, birds, insects, soil, water, mountains, etc. But how do we differentiate between what is living and what is not living? Can you suggest me or can you define life? Well, according to me, life cannot be defined. Life is something that has no definition. Anything that possesses life is a living organism. Let that be plants, animals, humans, microorganisms. And every living organism has certain features that differentiate it from non-living objects. Let's take a look at features of life. So all living organisms grow. By growth, we mean they grow in size. They increase their mass, and that happens by cell division. Every living organism requires food and water to live. They reproduce or they give rise to their offsprings. They also get rid of unwanted substances from their body. That is, they remove the harmful or the unwanted substances from their body in the form of urine, in the form of sweat, and so on. They respond to various kinds of stimuli. That is, they respond to the changes happening in the environment. Like they can respond to pain, pressure, touch, light, sound, etc. And all living organisms have a definite lifespan. Lifespan is the time period from the birth to the natural death of an organism. So every organism has a different lifespan. Now, growth is something that refers to increase in mass of the body. And growth usually occurs by cell division. When the cell divides, growth happens. In plants, growth takes place throughout their life because of the presence of meristematic tissues, which keep on dividing throughout life. But in case of animals, that is not the case. In animals, growth takes place only up to a certain period of time. In unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction is synonymous. How do we say they are synonymous? Because when a unicellular organism divides, it is getting splitted into two parts. It is getting splitted into two daughter cells. That means it is growing as well as reproducing at the same time. Now there are many other non-living objects like mountains, boulders, sand mounds that also grow. But then that growth is due to deposition of materials on the surface. But in living organisms, growth is from inside. Okay, so growth cannot be defined as a feature of life. It is not a defining feature of life. It does not define life because there are non-living objects that grow too. Now we come to the next feature of living organisms, which is reproduction. Reproduction is the production of offsprings, which are almost similar to the parents. Now, reproduction can happen either sexually or asexually. There are many asexual modes of reproduction, and usually the lower organisms carry out a sexual mode of reproduction. Yeast and hydra, they reproduce by budding. That means they develop a tiny structure on the parent body, which is called a bud. When it matures, the bud detaches and gives rise to a new offspring. There is another asexual mode of reproduction called regeneration. That is, if an organism loses a part of its body, it can regenerate into a new organism. Certain fungi and algae, they reproduce by fragmentation. That is, they break down accidentally and each fragment develops into a new organism. There are some organisms that do not reproduce, like mules, sterile worker bees, and infertile human couples. But then, can we consider them to be non-living? No, we cannot. They are also living, but they do not have the capacity to reproduce. So, reproduction also cannot be considered as a defining feature of life. Now, the next feature is metabolism. Metabolism is a sum total of all the chemical reactions taking place inside our body. So, it includes endothermic reactions as well as exothermic reactions. Endothermic reactions are the reactions that require energy, like photosynthesis is an endothermic reaction and it requires energy, that is the solar energy. So photosynthesis can be considered as an endothermic reaction, whereas exothermic reactions are the reactions that release energy or they produce energy. For example, respiration. Respiration is an exothermic reaction because we produce energy in the process. Now, there are different types of chemical reactions that take place in vitro or in the lab conditions. But since they are not taking place inside a living body, they can be considered as living reactions, but not living organisms. So we can say that metabolism is a defining feature of life because metabolism can only occur in living organisms. No non-living object shows metabolism. The next feature is consciousness. Now, consciousness is the ability of every organism to sense the environment. So, there are different changes happening in the environment. There are different kinds of stimuli in the environment, like light, water, touch, pressure, temperature, etc. And every living organism responds to these changes that take place in the environment. Humans have a tendency of self-consciousness. That means they are aware of themselves. No other animal is aware of itself. So we are aware of ourselves because we know how we are looking, what we should wear, what we should not. This is all because of our self consciousness. And consciousness can be defined or can be termed as a defining feature of life.